The council chamber on Apex Prime Station was massive. Beings from 100 different worlds sat in curved rows, their bodies ranging from insect-like to reptilian to something that looked like living crystals. At the center table, military commanders argued in heated voices that translated through earpieces into dozens of languages. Captain stood at the back of the human delegation, his uniform crisp and his face calm. He had worn this expression for 20 years of service. It was the face of someone who had learned to wait. Beside him, Lieutenant tapped her, reviewing tactical reports that no one had asked her opinion about. "They have broken through the 7th Fleet," Commander announced. The reptilian warrior's scales flashed red with agitation. "They destroyed 18 capital ships in 4 hours. Our defensive line at Helios Reach will fall within the week." Murmurs rippled through the chamber. The swarm had been the galaxy's nightmare for 30 years. They came in waves of millions strong, consuming everything. World after world had burned. The Galactic Coalition had fought them to a stalemate, but now that stalemate was breaking. Admiral N rose from her seat, her 4 arms gesturing for silence. There were natural leaders, tall and graceful. "We need fresh forces. Every able species must commit their warriors." Counselor Park stood up from the human section. He was older than, his hair gray, but his voice carried strength. "The Terran Republic offers our military forces for deployment." The chamber went silent. Then someone laughed. It was a commander in the 3rd row. "The humans?" Translator gave his words a mocking tone. "With respect, Counselor, your species joined the Coalition 200 years ago. You have served well in support roles. Engineering, medicine, logistics, but warfare," he shook his massive head. "Your historical records show you are emotional, unpredictable. The Battle of was 2 centuries ago," Park interrupted calmly. "And if you read the full report—" "We read enough," another commander said. This one was his skin patterns showing disdain. "Humans fled that battle. Your ships were the first to retreat. You are merchants and builders, not soldiers. We respect what you do, but this is war." His hand tightened on her, touched her shoulder gently. "Not yet," the gesture said. Park nodded slowly. "Then we request observer status. Let us send ships to monitor the battle. We can assist with rescue operations." Admiral N considered this. "Very well, your frigate." She consulted her notes. "The Iron Phoenix may accompany the fleet. Escort duty, rear position. Commander, you will coordinate with Captain." Said stepping forward, "Captain, ma'am." Looked him up and down. "Try not to run when the shooting starts, Captain." Some of the alien commanders chuckled, saluted, and left the chamber with his delegation. In the corridor outside's face was red. "Observer status, escort duty. They're putting us with the supply ships." "I know," said quietly. "They think we're cowards," she continued. "They don't even know what happened at. Command sacrificed our fleet to buy time for the evacuation. 50,000 human soldiers died holding that line, and they call it running away." "I know," repeated. They walked toward the docking bay where their shuttle waited. "But anger doesn't change minds. Action does." Park caught up with them. "Captain, I'm sorry I tried." "You did your job, sir," said. "Now I'll do mine." On board the Iron Phoenix, the crew assembled in the main briefing room. The frigate wasn't large, just 240 personnel, but every person knew their job. Sergeant stood with his Marine squad, arms crossed over his broad chest. Tech Specialist Ara sat with the electronics team. Corporal Bin Lee represented the medical staff. They all looked at their captain. "We've been assigned to the fleet," announced. "Escort position, they don't expect us to fight." Private Song, the youngest Marine, frowned. "So what do we do, sir?" Smiled. It wasn't a kind smile. "We wait, we watch, and when the moment comes we show them who we are." Brought up a holographic display. The fight in swarm patterns. They overwhelm defenses with numbers. The coalition counters with heavy firepower and defensive formations. It's worked for 3 decades, but they are adapting. What's their weakness? Asked. They're predictable, said. Once they commit to an attack pattern, they don't change it. Every species in the coalition fights the same way, with honor, with tradition, with rigid tactics. It's why this war has lasted so long. But we don't fight like that, Ara said thoughtfully. No, agreed. We don't. Humanity spent 10,000 years fighting itself. We learned every dirty trick, every desperate strategy. Ambushes, guerrilla warfare, psychological operations, improvisation. He looked at each face. The coalition species developed space travel before they had major wars. They have warrior cultures, yes, but they've never faced an enemy like themselves. We have. Grinned, so we're the barbarians of the galaxy. We're the survivors, corrected, and we're going to remind them what that means. The Iron Phoenix launched from Apex Prime 3 hours later. Around it, the coalition fleet assembled, hundreds of warships, each following precise formation protocols. The human frigate took its position at the rear, near the medical ships and supply vessels. On the bridge, watched the fleet coordinates. Jump in 30 minutes. Sat in his command chair, thinking about the council chamber, about the laughter, about the dismissal in their eyes. 200 years of loyalty, and they still saw humans as primitives, as the species that ran away. Captain's voice came over the comm. She was in the Marine Bay. The squad is ready. Whatever happens, we'll make Earth proud. Earth isn't watching, Private said gently, but the galaxy is. Let's give them something to see. The fleet jumped to hyperspace. The Helios Reach waited ahead, a battlefield where the fate of 3-star systems would be decided. The coalition's warriors prepared for honorable combat. The swarm prepared to feed. And in the rear, aboard a small frigate that no one expected anything from, humanity prepared to remind the galaxy of an old truth. Never underestimate the species that learned to survive against itself. The Iron Phoenix flew toward the fire, carrying legends that the galaxy had forgotten. The Helios Reach looked like a graveyard of stars. 3 systems converged here, creating a natural through space. Whoever controlled this region controlled the trade routes to 14 colonies. The swarm knew this. So did the coalition. The fleet dropped out of hyperspace in perfect formation, watched from the Iron Phoenix bridge as hundreds of warships took their positions. Beautiful, he thought, like a parade formation, like something from a textbook. Contact announced, signatures, thousands of them. They showed what looked like a swarm of insects, but each insect was the size of a city. Living vessels with weapons grown from their own bodies. They moved together, a wall of chitin and teeth and hunger. All ships hold formation, Admiral N's voice commanded across the fleet channel. Fire on my mark. The coalition opened fire. Energy beams lanced through space, hitting the swarm. Explosions bloomed like flowers. The first wave died, but more came behind them, always more. Studied the battle patterns. The coalition ships stayed in their formations, firing in coordinated volleys. It was effective. It was also predictable. He saw them begin to adapt, flowing around the heaviest fire, concentrating on weak points. They're learning, said quietly, already. 4 hours into the battle, the coalition lost its first capital ship, a dreadnought overwhelmed by boarding organisms. 6 hours in, they lost 3 more. They weren't just numerous, they were smart. Captain, Ara called from her station. The Crimson Valor is venting atmosphere. That's Commander's ship. Stood up, plot an intercept course. Sir, we're not authorized to leave our position. I didn't ask for authorization, plot the course. The Iron Phoenix broke from the escort line and dove into the battle zone. Plasma fire streaked past them, latched onto a cruiser, and they watched it get torn apart. This wasn't warfare. This was butchery. Target around the Crimson Valor, ordered. Firing pattern Delta 7. Sir, that pattern isn't in coalition doctrine, the weapons officer said. I know, use it anyway. The Iron Phoenix didn't fire in straight lines. It spiraled, shooting, then moving, then shooting again from a different angle. The targeting systems used to predictable coalition attacks couldn't lock on. Confusion rippled through the swarm near the damaged ship. "Sergeant, take your squad. Boarding operation," commanded. "On my way, sir." The frigate pulled alongside the Crimson Valor. The ship had holes in its hull, fires burning in the vacuum, and organisms crawling through the corridors. And his 20 Marines launched from the airlock, using magnetic boots and thruster packs. Private Song was the first through the breach. She saw a warrior pinned by a soldier form, a creature like a massive centipede with blade arms. Her rifle came up and she fired 3 times. Center mass. The thing screeched and died. "Move, move," shouted. The Marines pushed through the damaged ship. They didn't move like coalition soldiers who advanced in proud lines. The humans moved in pairs, covering each other, using the wreckage for cover, flowing like water through the corridors. A group of survivors huddled in a sealed compartment, breached the door. "Come on, we're evacuating." They stared at him. One of them was Commander, his scales burned, his breathing labored. "You came back into the fire." "Yeah, well, we're stupid that way," said. "Now move." Corporal Bin Lee worked frantically in a damaged medical bay. Injured aliens lay everywhere, species he didn't recognize. Human medical training was built on human biology, but Bin made it work. He sealed a bleeding limb with foam bandages. He splinted a warrior's broken tail. He didn't ask questions. He just saved lives. Held the corridor alone while the others evacuated. 3 organisms came at her. She killed the first with a headshot, the second with a burst to its core, but the third got close. Too close. Its blade arm slashed, cutting across her shoulder. She fell back, firing one-handed, and the thing finally dropped dead on top of her. "Private down," someone shouted. Dragged her out from under the corpse. Blood poured from her shoulder. "Medic." "I'm okay," gasped. "Get the others out, I can walk." They made it back to the Iron Phoenix with 73 survivors. Commander collapsed in the cargo bay, staring at the human Marines who had pulled him from certain death. They didn't look like warriors. They were small, soft-skinned, fragile, but they had run into hell to save people who had mocked them. On the bridge, the battle raged. The coalition fleet was breaking. Admiral N ordered a retreat, but they had cut off the escape routes. Ships died by the dozen. Panic crept into the command channel. "Captain, we need to jump out," said. "If we stay, we die with the rest." Watched the tactical display. The coalition ships still followed their formations, even as those formations fell apart. They fought with honor, with tradition, with predictability. "Ara," he said, "can you spoof our transponder, make us look like a supply ship?" "Yes, sir, why?" "Because they ignore supply ships until after the battle. They focus on warships. Broadcast this pattern to any coalition ship that will listen. Attack from unexpected angles, break formation, use the debris field for cover. Don't fight fair." "They won't listen," said. "Some will." 3 destroyers broke formation and followed the Iron Phoenix's lead. They moved erratically, firing from behind wrecked ships, refusing to stand still. They adapted slowly, too slowly. Those 3 ships survived when others around them died. A heavy cruiser, the tactic, then a flight of fighters. Slowly the message spread, fight like the humans. The battle lasted 18 hours. When it ended, the coalition had lost 38 ships. They should have lost everything. The surviving fleet limped toward the fortress world of 7, damaged and traumatized. In the Iron Phoenix medical bay, Bin worked on shoulder. She had 17 stitches and would have a scar. "You held that corridor alone," he said. "Someone had to." In the cargo bay, Commander found Captain. The warrior looked different now. Humbler. "You saved my crew, my life." "It's what we do," said simply. "I mocked you in the council." "Yes." Scales shifted colors, shame in body language. Your tactics in battle, they were chaos, unpredictable, nothing like how warriors should fight. We don't fight like warriors, said. We fight like survivors, there's a difference. The commander was silent for a long moment. Perhaps we dismissed you too quickly. On the bridge, Admiral N's hologram appeared. She looked exhausted. Captain, your actions saved at least 12 ships today. I am in your debt. Just doing our job, ma'am. The fleet arrives at 7 in 6 hours. The will follow, they always do. She paused. I am giving you command of the planetary defense. Felt stiffened beside him. Ma'am. You fight differently. The coalition's methods are failing. Perhaps it is time we tried something new. Her 4 eyes met his. Save that world, Captain. 4 billion people are depending on it. The hologram faded. Looked at the bridge crew, at the battered ship around him. They had just survived hell. Now they were being asked to walk back into it. Well, said finally, at least they're listening now. Sat in his command chair. Through he could see 7 growing larger. A beautiful world of blue oceans and green continents. A world that would die unless someone saved it. They had wanted to see what humans could do. Now they would learn. 7 was a fortress world. Massive defense platforms orbited the planet. Energy shields protected the major cities. Millions of coalition soldiers manned the walls and bunkers. It looked impenetrable. Knew better, they would come in numbers that made defenses meaningless. They would overwhelm through sheer mass, unless something changed. The Coalition Council met in the Planetary Command Center, deep underground. Generals and commanders from a dozen species argued over strategy. When entered, the room went quiet. Admiral N gestured him forward. Captain, you have command of the defense. What do you need? Every human on this planet said. Military, civilian, engineers, doctors, everyone. A general frowned. We have 4 million coalition soldiers already positioned. How will a few thousand humans make a difference? That's what they said at Helios Reach, spoke up. The commander had a bandage across his chest. I recommend we listen. Activated a holographic map of the planet. The coalition fights by defending strong points. You build walls and put soldiers behind them. They simply bring more soldiers than you have bullets. It's a numbers game you can't win. Then how do you propose we fight? They asked. We don't defend strong points. We make the entire battlefield hostile. We use terrain. We use traps. We make them bleed for every meter. Zoomed into one of the major cities. You see walls, I see. You see open ground. I see kill zones. You see buildings. I see cover and ambush sites. That's dishonorable, someone muttered. That's survival, said, stepping forward. Humans have a saying, there's no such thing as a fair fight, not when lives are at stake. Admiral N studied the map. Explain your plan. For 2 hours and outlined a defensive strategy unlike anything the coalition had ever used. Layer defenses but make some intentionally weak. Let the enemy through, then collapse the trap. Use mobile units instead of static positions. Hit and run. Ambush. Make the chase ghosts. You're asking us to fight like cowards, a general said. Sergeant had been standing in the back. Now he stepped forward. No, sir, we're asking you to fight like you want to win. The council voted. By a narrow margin, they agreed to try the human plan. Had 72 hours before they arrived. Major O landed with the first wave of human reinforcements. She was a ground combat specialist, a woman who had spent 20 years fighting in Earth's worst conflict zones. She looked at the defensive positions and shook her head. This is all wrong, she told. Whoever designed these defenses was thinking about honor, not results. Can you fix it? Give me 3 days and 5,000 bodies. I'll make this planet a nightmare for anything trying to take it. She got her people. Humans poured into the defense zones, soldiers, yes, but also construction workers, programmers, chemists, anyone with a useful skill. They began to rebuild the defenses from the ground up. Staff Sergeant Wu Nam worked with a team of demolition experts. They planted explosives in unexpected places, under roads, in abandoned buildings, beneath bridges. The coalition soldiers watched, confused. Why mine places you want to defend? It's not about holding ground, Wu explained. It's about making them pay for every step. A bridge collapse can bottle up 1,000. A building collapse can bury hundreds. We're not trying to stop them. We're trying to bleed them. Dr. Shin studied captured organisms in a research lab. She had spent her career analyzing alien life. Now she examined the enemy. They communicate through pheromones, she explained to Ara, chemical signals. It's how they coordinate swarm attacks. If we could disrupt those signals. Ara smiled. Then they'd be confused, disorganized. Tech specialist Ara at your service, doctor. Let's build a jammer. They worked for 60 straight hours. Ara assembled electronic warfare equipment unlike anything in coalition arsenals. It was crude, built from salvaged parts and human ingenuity, but it worked. In tests, captured organisms became agitated, aggressive toward each other instead of the enemy. It won't stop them, warned, but it will slow them down. Slow is good enough, Ara said. Trained coalition soldiers in close-quarters combat. The aliens were stronger, faster, better warriors by every physical measure. But they fought in predictable patterns, strikes and blocks learned from ancient traditions. Forget tradition, told a group of warriors. Someone swings at you, you don't block honorably. You kick them in the knee, throw dirt in their eyes, bite if you have to. You fight to survive, not to look good. They were horrified at first. Then they started practicing. Within days, they were fighting dirtier, smarter, not like warriors, like survivors. Her shoulder still bandaged, helped set up supply lines. Her job was simple but critical. Make sure ammunition, food, and medical supplies could reach any part of the battlefield within minutes. The coalition had always maintained central supply depots. The humans scattered supplies everywhere, in hidden caches, redundant and flexible. What if the enemy finds them? A quartermaster asked. We booby-trap them, said. They open the wrong crate, it explodes. They learn to avoid our supply lines. The planet transformed. What had been orderly defensive lines became a maze of traps and ambush points. Coalition soldiers trained in new tactics, tactical retreats, flanking maneuvers, improvised explosives. They learned to fight without honor, without pride, without fairness. They learned to fight like humans. Corporal Bin Lee organized the medical response. Instead of one central hospital, he created dozens of small medical stations. When the casualties come, they'll come fast, he explained. We can't waste time transporting wounded across the planet. We treat them where they fall. He trained alien medics in combat medicine, how to seal wounds under fire, how to prioritize patients, how to make impossible choices about who lived and who died. It was brutal education, but necessary. On the third day, alarms screamed across the planet. They had arrived. Captain stood in the command center, surrounded by holographic displays showing the orbital battle. 10 million descended through the atmosphere. The sky turned black with them. It looked like the end of the world. All positions, this is command, broadcast. Let them come. Let them think they're winning. Then we spring the trap. Admiral N stood beside him. I hope you know what you're doing, Captain. So do I, admitted. The first landed in the northern continent. Coalition forces fell back, seemingly in panic. They poured through the gaps, racing toward the cities. They thought they were winning. Then Major triggered the first kill zone. Explosives detonated in sequence, collapsing buildings onto the advancing swarm. Roads cratered. Bridges fell. The forward units were cut off from their support, surrounded by ruins. Hidden coalition forces opened fire from every direction. Phase 1 successful, reported. Northern sector is bleeding them. Southern sector pull back to line Charlie, ordered. Let them follow. Across the planet, the pattern repeated. Human tactics spread through the coalition forces. The aliens fought like they never had before, dirty, smart, ruthless. They lured enemies into traps. They ambushed from unexpected angles. They used every trick humans had learned in 10,000 years of warfare. They kept coming, millions of them, but for every coalition soldier that fell, 10 died. The numbers were finally working in their favor. In a bunker complex, Private Han Ryu set up his rifle. He was a sniper, patient and precise. Through his scope, he watched commander organisms, larger creatures that coordinated the swarm. He took his time, controlled his breathing, and fired. 2 kilometers away, a commander's head exploded. The swarm around it collapsed into chaos. Han adjusted his aim and found another target. The battle raged through the first day and into the night. The planet burned. Cities became ruins, but the coalition held. Not just held, they were winning. In the command center, alien commanders watched in disbelief. This was war unlike anything they had known. There was no glory in it, no honor, just calculated violence and desperate survival. But it was working. They're adapting to our tactics, warned, studying the data. They're learning like they always do. Then we adapt faster, said. That's what humans do best. They kept coming. The defenders kept fighting. And somewhere in the chaos, the galaxy began to remember what humanity really was. The second wave hit at dawn. They had learned from the first day. They came in formations, avoiding the obvious choke points. They adapted just like they always did. Major watched from her command post. They're getting smarter. Time for Phase 2. Execute, confirmed. Aura activated the pheromone jammers. Across the battlefield, hidden devices began broadcasting chemical signals that scrambled communication. The effect was immediate and brutal. Units that had been moving in coordinated patterns suddenly broke apart. They attacked each other, confused and aggressive. Jammers working, Aura reported. They'll adapt in a few hours, but for now we have them. Coalition forces surged forward. They had learned the human way, strike when the enemy is weak, retreat when they're strong. No honor, just results. In the ruins of the capital city, Sergeant led a mixed squad. Half were humans, half were warriors he had trained. They moved through collapsed buildings, hunting advance units. Contact 2 o'clock, whispered. She had refused to stay in the medical bay. Her wounded shoulder was taped up, her rifle ready. Made hand signals. The squad split up, flanking the position. It was a textbook ambush, something they had thought dishonorable 3 days ago. Now they executed it perfectly. They opened fire from 3 sides. They never knew what hit them. 15 enemies dead in seconds, 0 friendly casualties. Move, ordered, before their reinforcements arrive. The squad melted back into the ruins. That was the human way. Hit hard, disappear fast, hit again from a new angle. Above the planet, Flight Commander Sara led a squadron of human fighters through the orbital battle. Coalition fighters flew in formations, but Sara's squadron moved like a school of fish, fluid, unpredictable, each pilot covering the others. Hive ship bearing 347, her wingman called. It's launching boarding pods toward the surface. Sora saw it, a massive, kilometers long, spawning thousands of smaller organisms. If those pods reached the ground, the planet's defenders would be overwhelmed. All fighters form on me, Sara ordered. We're going in. That's suicide, a pilot protested. Only if we fail, let's not fail. Her squadron dove toward the Hive ship. Point defense fire filled space around them. Sora's fighter took a hit, shields flickering. She kept going. The other pilots followed, human, fighting together. They reached the Hive ship's core, that soft spot where it spawned its pods. Sora armed every missile she had. Fire everything, then get out. The missiles streaked home. The Hive ship's core erupted in fire. Secondary explosions rippled through its body. It began to die, thrashing in space. "Eject," Sora shouted to her squad. She hit her emergency ejection, the canopy blowing off her fighter as it exploded. Her pod tumbled through space, beacon blinking. Search and rescue would find her, if she survived that long. On the ground, the battle became desperate. The pushed harder. They were learning to work around the jammers, adapting their tactics. The kill zones were less effective now. The traps had been sprung. It came down to soldiers against monsters, skill against numbers. Private Hanryu sat in his sniper position, firing methodically. He had learned to aim for the sensory organs, the clusters of eyes that guided them. Blind them, and they became easy targets for other soldiers. His rifle cracked. 2 kilometers away, an artillery organism collapsed. Another shot, another kill. He had stopped counting at 50. "Han, fall back," his spotter said. "They're flanking our position." Han took one more shot, hitting a that was crawling toward coalition wounded. Then he grabbed his rifle and ran. A sniper who stayed too long was a dead sniper. In the medical stations, Corporal Bin Lee worked without stopping. His hands were steady as he stitched a warrior's arm, even as the building shook from nearby explosions. Blood covered his uniform, red human blood, blue blood, purple blood. It all looked the same after a while. A medic rushed in carrying. She was unconscious, a deep gash across her side. "Private Song took shrapnel protecting a squad," the medic said. "She wouldn't leave them." Bin's heart clenched, but his hand stayed steady. "Get her on the table, now." He worked fast. The wound was bad but not fatal if he acted quickly. He cleaned it, sealed the major vessels, began stitching. Around him, other medics treated other wounded. The station was overcrowded, undersupplied, but they made it work. "She'll live," Bin finally said. "Tough kid." The battle raged into the afternoon. Commander fought on the front lines beside human Marines. He had learned their tactics, their ruthlessness. When a soldier charged him, he didn't meet it with an honorable duel. He threw a grenade, dove for cover, and shot it while it was stunned. No pride, just survival. A warrior beside him fell, overwhelmed by 3, emptied his weapon into the enemies, saving his soldier. The warrior looked up at him with shock. "Commander, that was not honorable." "I learned from the humans," said, pulling him to his feet. "Honor is for peacetime. In war, we do what we must." In the command center, watched the holographic displays with growing concern. The coalition was holding, but barely. Casualties mounted. Ammunition ran low. They kept coming, and they were adapting faster than expected. "We need something big," said. "Something to break their momentum." Dr. Shin rushed into the command center. "I found something. The coordinate through a main node organism. It's massive, buried in their landing zone. If we kill it, the swarm loses cohesion for hours." "How do we reach it?" asked. "We don't," said. "It's surrounded by millions of, but—" She pulled up a map. "If we hit it with orbital bombardment, we can take it out." "The defense platforms are offline," said, "and our fleet is engaged in orbit. We can't get a firing solution." Sora's voice crackled over the comm. She had been rescued from her escape pod. "I can get you a firing solution. Get me a bomber with a targeting laser." "That's suicide," Admiral N said. "You'd have to fly through the entire swarm." "Yeah," Sora said. "I know, but it'll work." Closed his eyes. He was asking people to die. But if they didn't act, everyone on the planet died anyway. Do it. Sora launched 30 minutes later in a heavy bomber, escorted by volunteers, human and alien pilots who knew they probably wouldn't come back. They dove toward the planet, straight into the swarm. Fighters died. One by one, the escorts fell to fire, but Sora kept flying. Her bomber's shields failed. Her engines were hit, but she kept flying. She reached the target zone. Through her canopy, she could see the node organism, a massive creature, pulsing with bioelectric signals. She activated the targeting laser and held it steady. Lock acquired, she broadcast. Fire, fire, fire. Above the planet, every coalition ship with a working gun opened fire on the coordinates. Energy beams converged on the node organism. It exploded, sending a shockwave through the swarm. Sora's bomber was caught in the blast. She didn't eject this time. There was no time. But she had done her job. The swarm collapsed into chaos. Without their coordinator, they became nothing but mindless creatures. The coalition forces surged forward, driving them back, cutting them down. By nightfall, the battle was over. The retreated actually retreated. For the first time in 30 years, they fled from a defended world. The coalition had won. In the command center stood in silence. Around him, alien commanders celebrated, but he could only think of the cost. 51% of the human forces were dead or wounded, was in critical condition. Sara was gone, so many others. Approached him, the commander's scales were black with soot. Captain, I understand now. You are not legends of defeat. You are legends of survival. There is a difference. Survival costs, said quietly. Yes, but you paid it so others wouldn't have to, placed a clawed hand on shoulder. Your species. You are warriors, real warriors, not like us. We fight for honor, you fight for life. That is the harder path. Admiral N appeared on the holographic display. She looked exhausted but proud. Captain, you saved 4 billion lives today. The coalition is in your debt. Nodded, he didn't feel victorious. He felt tired. But they had won, and the galaxy would remember. 3 months after the Battle of Seven, the Galactic Coalition Council met again on Apex Prime Station. The chamber looked the same, but everything had changed. Captain, now Commodore, stood before the council. Behind him stood representatives from every human unit that had fought at Seven. Lieutenant, now a full commander. Sergeant, promoted to lieutenant. Private Song, recovered from her wounds, wearing her new corporal stripes. Major O, Ara Bin Lee, Dr. Shin, Han Ryu. They stood in silence while the council chamber filled. Every seat was occupied. Species from across the galaxy wanted to see this. Admiral N rose to speak, her 4 arms spread wide. The Galactic Coalition stands here today because of human courage. 3 months ago, we mocked them. We called them cowards. We were wrong. The chamber was silent. The Terran species has proven themselves in battle. More than that, they have taught us how to fight. Their tactics, their strategies, their willingness to do whatever it takes, these have changed the course of the war. She turned to Commodore. On behalf of the Coalition Council, I formally apologize for our disrespect. We should have listened to you from the beginning. Counselor Park stepped forward. He looked older than he had 3 months ago. The war had aged them all. We accept your apology, Admiral, but we didn't need your permission to be warriors. We needed your acknowledgement. Now we have it. Commander stood. The warrior's scales showed deep respect, a color pattern that meant reverence in his culture. I have trained under Major O for 2 months. I have learned more about combat in that time than in 20 years of traditional military service. The humans fight without honor, yes, but they fight to win. That is the greater honor. A general spoke up. We have integrated human tactical doctrine into our military academies, asymmetric warfare, psychological operations, improvised tactics. These are now required study for all coalition officers. Our fighter pilots train with human instructors, another commander added. They learn to break formation, to fight unpredictably. Our casualties have dropped by 40%. Admiral N continued. The Coalition Council votes to promote Commodore to Fleet Command. He will lead a multi-species battle group, the first combined strike force. His mission, to take the fight to the... Stepped forward. I accept, Admiral, but I have conditions. The council murmured, a human making demands. Speak, N said. First, human tactical officers will be integrated into every coalition military unit. Second, All soldiers will receive training in asymmetric warfare. Third, no species will be dismissed based on stereotypes or history. We judge by results, not reputation. The council voted. It passed unanimously. Was appointed Chief Tactical Advisor to Coalition Fleet Command. She would teach the galaxy's admirals how to think like humans, creatively, ruthlessly, adaptively. Major took command of the Coalition's new guerrilla warfare division. Thousands of soldiers from dozens of species signed up to learn from her. Became the head instructor at the Coalition Military Academy. His classes on close-quarters combat were the most requested courses. Students learned that fighting dirty meant fighting smart. Across the galaxy, things were changing. In Coalition bases, alien soldiers trained under human instructors. They learned to think outside traditional warrior codes. They learned that survival was more important than honor. They learned to adapt. On 7, they built a monument in the ruins of the capital. It was simple, a black stone wall with names carved into it. Human names, names, names. All the dead from that terrible battle. At the top, in every written language of the Coalition, here stood Terrans, here stands freedom. Visited the monument before her next deployment. She found Saurus' name carved into the stone. The pilot who had died to save them all touched the name gently. "We won't forget," she whispered. In Coalition command centers, human tactics were now standard. Commanders studied Earth's military history, from ancient battles to modern special operations. They analyzed human wars, trying to understand how one species could be so creative in violence. They fought themselves for 10,000 years, a military historian explained in a lecture. Every trick they use against us, they first used against each other. That is why they are so effective. They know every way a battle can go wrong because they have experienced it. Young alien recruits asked to serve in human-led units. It was an honor now, not a punishment. To serve with Terrans meant you were the best. It meant you were willing to do what was necessary. The war against the continued, but the tide had turned. The Coalition no longer just defended. They attacked. They used guerrilla tactics, hit-and-run strikes, psychological warfare. They fought like humans and they were winning. 6 months after 7's battle group scored its first major victory. They destroyed a breeding world using tactics that would have been unthinkable before. They didn't fight fair. They fought to win. On the bridge of his flagship, the Iron Phoenix, now a carrier with 3 mixed battalions, watched the battle unfold. Beside him, coordinated the fleet movements. Below, in the Combat Control Center, briefed a mixed-species Marine force before a boarding action. "Remember," told them, "out there you'll face enemies who want you dead. We don't fight like them. We fight smarter, we adapt, we survive, and we never ever leave our people behind." The Marines, human, species didn't even recognize, roared their approval. They had learned the Terran way. "You think they understand?" asked quietly. "They're learning," said. "We spent 200 years trying to prove ourselves with words. Turns out actions speak louder. The council wants you to give a speech at the next session, something inspiring." Smiled. "I'm not good at speeches." "You're a Commodore now. Speeches are part of the job." He looked at the tactical display. The battle was going well. They were adapting, but so was the Coalition. Faster now, better. "If I give a speech, I'll tell them the truth. We're not heroes, we're survivors. That's what humanity has always been." "They think we're heroes anyway," said. "Then they're wrong. Heroes are people who do the impossible. We just do what's necessary." The flagship jumped to hyperspace, taking the battle to the next system. Behind them, the breeding world burned. Ahead, more battles waited. The war was far from over. But humanity was no longer dismissed, no longer mocked. The galaxy had learned what humans really were, not primitive merchants or cowardly support staff, but warriors who fought with everything they had. Warriors who used intelligence instead of tradition. Warriors who survived. In military academies across the coalition, instructors taught the new doctrine. Think like a human, they said. Question everything, adapt to anything, do whatever it takes to win. In bars and recreation centers, alien soldiers told stories about fighting alongside humans. They spoke with respect, sometimes with awe. The Terrans who held impossible positions, the human medics who saved lives under fire, the pilots who flew suicide runs to save others. They spoke of Sergeant who could clear a building in 30 seconds, of Corporal Song who held a corridor alone against 20 enemies, of Flight Commander Sara who sacrificed herself to save a planet, of Commodore who changed how the galaxy fought wars. They spoke of humans and they spoke with pride, because now they fought like humans too. On Earth, people watched the news from the front lines. Their soldiers were heroes now, celebrated across the galaxy. Humanity had found its place in the cosmos, not as merchants or engineers, but as warriors. But on the battlefields, the humans themselves knew better. They weren't warriors because they loved war. They were warriors because they knew how to survive it. Every human carried that knowledge in their DNA, the memory of 10,000 years of conflict, adaptation, and endurance. The galaxy had dismissed them as old legends, stories about a species that ran from battle, that couldn't be trusted in combat. Now the galaxy knew the truth. Those old legends were wrong. Humanity had never run. They had survived. And survival meant being willing to do whatever was necessary, to think differently, to fight smarter. The Swarm was learning this the hard way. Every battle the Coalition adapted human tactics. Every battle the lost ground. One day, perhaps, the war would end. But until then, humans and their allies would keep fighting, keep adapting, keep surviving. On the bridge of the Iron Phoenix, Commodore looked at his mixed-species crew. Humans working alongside and dozens of other species. All of them trained in the Terran method. All of them ready to do what was necessary. "Next jump in 5 minutes," announced. "Take us in," ordered. The ship jumped to hyperspace, carrying its warriors toward the next battle. They weren't legends anymore. They were soldiers, and the galaxy would never forget them again. In the darkness between stars, humanity marched forward, not alone but leading, not because they were the strongest or the fastest, but because they knew how to survive. And in a galaxy at war, survival was the greatest strength of all.